All right, so here we have a 2002 Honda Accord. This car was recently purchased off Craigslist. So just a quick look at it. We know we have some oil leaks. The car did overheat on the way back. It had coolant dripping from the timing belt area. So this timing belt is water pump driven. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the timing belt, which would also include taking the valve cover off. So we're going to go ahead and take care of this oil leak in this condition first, get it running, and then reevaluate. As you'll see as we go through the car, there is a lot of other concerns and oil leaks we have here. So we're going to address each one as we go, attacking the timing belt and valve cover water pump as one repair here. All right, so we're going to start this repair by removing the valve cover. So we're removing the spark plug wires. Now these are all laid out in links, so they will kind of fall back in the same spot. There's no need to mark them or that. We're also going to go ahead and remove the spark plugs. This will make it easier to turn the engine over when we have the when we're working on the timing belt. So we'll go ahead and remove the spark plugs. And this is, right here is our PCV. All right, so we have a bad PCV right off the bat. This should rattle. So it's got a lot of carbon in there. So a bad PCV system will keep pressure in the oil system. So if there is a place where the oil can leak, it doesn't have any way to relieve the pressure. The intake's not pulling the crankcase pressure down, so it will push the oil out anywhere it can. So you can see even the bolts they're trying to push the vapor out of the bolts. So this PCV system was definitely not working on this car. All right, so not too bad. If the motor had cooked a lot, there'd be a lot of sludge build up on the top. So everything looks pretty good. All the roller surfaces, no groove marks, nothing like that. So we've got pretty good oil flow. All right, so we're going to go ahead and remove these belts, the drive belts here. So we have. This is our power steering pump, so we have our one mounting and then our one slide adjustment here. So we'll go ahead and we'll loosen the top bolt and the bottom bolt. We should be able to. There we have our belts. Now this is there's more stuff there, so that is definitely a bad belt. So there's a lot of maintenance concerns here. Okay, so the alternator is the same thing. We have a mounting bolt on the top. We're going to go ahead and loosen that mounting bolt. That one's a 14 millimeter. Okay, so now we have both mounting bolts loose. Now this one has a 10 millimeter adjuster right here. So go ahead and, as we back this bolt up, we'll be able to loosen the belt. All right, so now we're going to raise the car up and remove the wheel and the inner wheel well so we can get to the crank pulley down below. All right, so now we're going to remove this inner fender well so we can, our liner, so we can get to the pulley there. So we got a couple little clips we need to get out. Now I'm just going to try to remove this well enough to swing out of the way. I'm not going to try to remove the whole piece. What we need to do now is we need to remove the crank pulley bolt. Now we're just here, our compressor is just a small little tank compressor. It doesn't get up above 90 psi, it doesn't have much volume. It is your basic do-it-yourself or garage compressor. This bolt's going to be pretty tight. We're going to try to use an air gun. Now the air gun is a good, it's a Blue Point, it's a snap-on. So it has a ton of double hammer foot-pounds. So we're going to try to see if low pressure we can do it. But we're also going to show you there is a tool to do it by hand. But we'll try this way first for simplicity. All right, so we have our Honda crank pulley tool. This is basically going to hold the motor from spinning. We'll go ahead and see if we can loosen it like this. All right, so that just doesn't have the power to do it. That's what most people run into. All right, so now we will do it by hand. Okay, so what we have is, we have this breaker bar. We have it jammed on the knuckle. If you're on the ground, you can go ahead and take this and place it on the ground so the ground will keep it from swinging. We're on a lift, so we're going to use the control arm. All right, so we're going to have to get some leverage on this wrench here, so we're going to get a pipe and that'll be able to magnify our torque there. All right, so just want to make sure everything is square as possible. Give it a couple bounces there. All right, so now we got that bolt out. The pulley, we should be able to just kind of walk it back and forth, get it to pull right off. All right. So I want to make sure that we don't lose our keyway. All right, so we're just going to remove our cover here. So we got this wire connected. We need to just take it out of the connection points there. Put it out of the way. That is going to be for the crank sensor. All right, so now we're going to remove these 10 millimeter bolts around the perimeter. Now as I pull these out, I kind of just pay attention to the links to make sure that there's no special spots for any certain sizes. For the most part, they should all be the same. Sometimes if there's ones in the center, they do look different. right, so here we're going to take our jack. We have a piece of wood on it. What we're going to do is we're going to find a flat spot on the oil pan closest to the crank pulley, so we can remove the motor mount and it doesn't allow the motor to fall. So we'll go ahead and position our jack now. All right, so we're going to go ahead and remove our motor mount here. We're going to take the ground strap off first. Then we have 3 17mm bolts there. You see the motor fell a little bit. It fell onto our jack stand. We have another safety there for the motor mount. That's what it's not letting us up. This is the safety that we were just doing. That kind of keeps, if the motor mount fails, it's going to keep it bound up. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we're going to jack the jack up a little bit. We're going to raise the motor just a tiny bit so we can just get a little bit more angle there. That just kind of gets us a little bit more visibility. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we're going to remove the dipstick. So that exposed another bolt. Now we're just going, this is the upper cover for the timing belt. We're just kind of going around the perimeter. I'm going to remove all these bolts. All right, so we run into a little problem here where we're just spinning this bolt here. It's not coming out. So basically, this is the upper timing cover and this is the lower timing cover. They share. Basically, the bolt on one side goes through. There's a knurl with the threads on the other one. Well, that's spinning. So the nut on the inside has nothing to grab it, and it is spinning. So we're going to try a couple different things. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to apply pressure. We've already tried to split the two with the screwdriver where I put it in between and I tried to wedge it. Didn't work. I'm going to come into the back side now and I'm going to try to wedge it again and try to hold the back. If that doesn't work, I'm just going to move the screwdriver a little bit more and I'm going to pop it out and hopefully we don't break the cover too bad. But at this point you're kind of stuck. Okay, so that's what we were fighting. That guy just did not want to come off. So I basically just broke the top of it. First I tried to jam something in here, still too tight. Then I just went in and I forced it out of the connector. As I removed the lower shroud, you'll be able to see what I did there. Okay, so on our camshaft sprocket, we're going to have a position that says up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to spin this to the up position. There's going to be some marks here and one over here, and they should line up horizontal with the the lines for the valve cover there. And that right there is why we removed spark plug, so it makes it easy to go back and forth. We're not going against anything. All right, so now we're going to remove the belts. So what we're going to do is push the tensioner back. So this is the bolt that tightens the tensioner down. So we want to go ahead and we're going to loosen it about 2/3 to a full turn to get just enough to get some movement. We're going to push on it to relieve the tension, and then we're going to tighten it back up so it locks it down in the release position. All right, so now we have it loose. And that would be that one. Let's see here. So we're going to move some stuff. Basically, I pull some tension and then tighten it. Then we'll kind of walk the belt off. And so what we don't want to do is we want to make sure that this stays in the correct position. Now there is some other, if you broke the timing belt or if you had to lock it out for any certain reason, there is a bolt hole that you remove. You can put another bolt in, and that will bind up the far side of the counterbalance shaft. But as long as we don't move it and we know our position was right, then we're okay with all that. So you can see that's pretty worn. It's a good insurance to do this kind of stuff. This is an interference motor. So if the timing belt breaks, the valves will hit the piston, and that is pretty catastrophic repair. Okay, so we'll go ahead and remove the timing belt. So same thing, we just kind of slip it off. And come down here and remove the sprocket for the counterbalance shaft. Okay. All right, so some of the inspection that we're going to do here is, one is, do we need to replace cam and crank seals? So if the timing belt was oily, we would know for sure. So far everything looks good, like we don't have, like the seals for the cam and the seals for the crank are not leaking. So that's always a good sign. Okay, we're going to go ahead and remove this upper mount here. This upper mount, we're just removing it so we can access the water pump. So this bracket here is what we're going to remove. We need to get to this water pump. So we're going to give ourselves some more room. There is some 2 bolts here. I believe they're going to be 14 millimeter. All right, so we're going to remove the tensioner so we can access the water pump. So we have a 10 millimeter here and then the 14. So we'll go ahead and we'll loosen this up. And you can see we did change angles. We're down below and we have the motor hanging now instead of jacked up. You see all of our tension, we had it locked out. So I always remember which way I have them when I take them out. So that was under on the top and hooked inward. Where that one was over and hooked outward. So we just want to make note of how things are. And you can see how our eccentrics work there for how the springs had tension on there. Okay, so now we're going to take the water pump off. All right, so now we'll remove the water pump. Now we've already drained the system, so this would all come pouring out if not. We have the O-ring still attached there, or the gasket. All right, so we just want to make sure our water pump surface is nice and clean. So we'll go ahead and wipe anything rough off and we'll spray it with some brake clean. All right, so our timing belt came with a new water pump. This is the component kit. It's a good time to do it now. All right, so we've installed our O-ring. All right, so we have this is where our spring was for our tensioner. All right, so we have all the water pump bolts in. Now we'll go ahead and tighten them up. All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll start putting our tensioners on. So we have our first one. So just to make some notes here, there is a little hole right here. It swings on this hole. So once I put that in, I'll be putting that on. It's part how the eccentric works. All right, so with our tensioner, we're going to go ahead, we're going to take one of our other bolts that we have. Kind of throw it in here. We're going to put this, rotate it all the way to the top. I believe that's which way we want to go. This will kind of hold this in place while we're setting the timing belt. All right, so now we want to put our new timing belt on. So we're going to wrap it counterclockwise. So we're going to start at the crank pulley here, and we're going to wind it through our tensioner, around our water pump, up to our cam pulley, and then it'll come back down. So we're going to route it this way. This will be our slack side, and then this will be the side that we're really concerned about for lining them up. So we already know our upstairs is good. We have readjusted our crank down here. It was off just a little bit from playing with it. So we'll go ahead and start laying that belt in. All right, so we're all laid in here now. Now we need to go up to the top and put the cam pulley on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the crank bolt in so we can spin the crank. So what we need to do is this side needs to be tight. This is our side for our tension. We're going to kind of back the crank pulley up a little bit so that once we tighten the slack out, our lines are lined up. So right now when we put them on, we'll have tension here. So we're just going to back up the crank a little bit so that once we rotate the crank, we suck the tension out of this side. So we give all the adjustment over to this side, and we still have our marks right. So we're kind of preloading it to get it to to sit right. And pop it back off. We want to go just past it. Okay, so that's one complete tooth. We've got all of our tension taken out of this side. All of our slack is on this side, so our tensioner will be able to absorb the slack. So we're going to go ahead and, this was the temporary bolt we installed. We're going to go ahead and tension this up. We're going to lock this bolt down. That's going to hold everything in place so we can go ahead and put our balance shaft back on. All right, so I've loosened it. I'm just going to go ahead and use my screwdriver and kind of just twist it and kind of pick it up a little bit. We're just trying to simulate what it's going to be like tensioned. So we'll go ahead and tighten this back down. Oh, it slid. We'll go ahead and hold it and tighten it. Okay, so now we've applied tension. All right, so now we're pretty tight all the way around. Our marks are still good. And so now we're going to go ahead and put the balance shaft on. We're gonna have to remove this bolt again kind of without moving anything. That was kind of a quick motion. We'll get that off. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and put our other tensioner on. Oh, Jesus. Okay, so this bolt has kind of a little step in it. That step is going to fit right inside the hole. And we did have a washer and then the actual lockdown. Okay, so we have that just finger tight there. Okay, so now we're going to do our balance shaft. Now our balance shaft had our mark on the top, mark on the side. Now there is some marks on the oil pump. We have it lined up right here. This one's not really a concern so much because the oil pump really doesn't have any indexing to it. But this balance shaft here, now there is another procedure because we want to spin the timing belt around a couple times, make sure that all the slack works out. We could go ahead and do that now, but what we would have to do is we'd have to pull a plug out of the side, put about a 6-inch bolt or something in there, and it would hold down the other end of this counter shaft so we could basically reset it. We're going to kind of do it all as one, like we're not going to move the timing belt and check for tension till we put the balance on. So we really have never broke relationship between the balance shaft and the crankshaft. We just know that we're on points for both, so that's you know the main concern. Okay, so we just check back up, make sure that our reference up top is good. I'm going to hold my finger on this balance shaft and keep it from moving. Then I'm just going to kind of check, try to kind of put it in the bottom, lined up, and find the groove for it. There's several different ways you could do this one. We could have just used the water pump or the oil pump pulley, put it on. All right, so now we have all of our tension up here. All right, so what we're going to do, hook up our spring. That gives us our little bit of load there. Now we do have spring for the other one too. Okay, so we're going to put our spring on. So there's a little hole on our back tensioner. So we had the bolt in there holding it. We have a little hole on that arm too, and then we have a stud sticking out with a ball in there for the other end of the spring. And our spring has two different sides to it. This side's a little smaller than this side. You can actually see the orange has rubbed off, so we know that that's the top. So we're going to go ahead and put this in. So now we're gotta be concerned, like, do we want the hook facing towards the timing belt, or do we want the hook facing backwards? So we want to keep sharp edges away from the belt, so always to the back. So it's gonna be like this. Kind of hard to sneak in there. I'm gonna go upstairs and do that. There we go. And then up. So this is kind of painful sometimes. I have a tool for that. We'll just reach in here and grab the hook. And put it on. All right. All right, so everything is tensioned now. All right, now so what we want to do is we want to release. We're going to release that lock. So the bolt that we put in to hold the tensioner, we're going to go ahead and take that bolt out now. We no longer need that there. Okay, so we're on spring tension everywhere. What we're going to do is we're going to put our crank bolt back in. And give it kind of a little tightness. We're going to rotate it counterclockwise. So when we do that, we pull the slack back out. All right, so now we have the slack pulled back out. Everything looks good. So we'll go ahead and we're going to tighten our tensioner down. Once we're through with this is about 33 foot-pounds, what we're going to leave it at. All right, so that would be all of our tensioners locked. We're a little loose on that one. We're going to have to probably put a little manual tension on that. Let's try that again. So we're going to go ahead and help out the tension a little bit. All right, so see, we tighten that up. All right, so now we want to simulate the vehicle running. So we're going to spin the engine over, let's say, in maybe 5-6 rotations. Let's get the bolt tight here because we're going opposite of the bolt. We're going counterclockwise so that we pull the tension out of everything, and going around 5 or 6 times is going to ensure that we've sucked all of the slack to the tensioner side. And then we're going to go ahead and check our marks again, and that will tell us if we were off a tooth, or you know, if we had our tension in the wrong spot, because we definitely want to make sure that that's correct before we start the vehicle. And this is a pain because we really have to get this bolt tight to keep going. We do have the plugs out. To make the engine spin over easier. All right, so now we got our cover on loosely. We're gonna go ahead and put our pulley on. Now, let's make another note there. Where am I at? I'm somewhere around here. There's a couple, let's see if we can, there's a couple notches. Top dead center, and these are timing marks off to the side. Top dead center though. Okay, so that's gonna line up right here. So even though we can't see our timing marks in here, we can ultimately see our timing mark. And we're doing the pulley install so that we can get that bolt tight so we can actually spin the motor over and check everything out. So we got to kind of go forward a little bit just to make sure everything is good before we can go back and reattach our cover and all that good stuff there. All right, so we'll go ahead and hold our crank pulley and the crankshaft. Now we can tighten that bolt without spinning the motor. All right. All right, so now we're going to spin the motor that counterclockwise so we can suck all the tension. So we'll go around a couple times. The crankshaft's got to go around 2 revolutions to match the camshafts 1. So 6 times around for the crank is really only 3 times around for the actual mechanics of the motor. All right, so we're going to come back around. We can see our mark. We're going to line our mark up. And we're going to go upstairs and see if we're camshaft's pointing up. Okay. Everything looks good there. The camshaft is still on the marks. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the pulley off now. So that, I'm going to just check our tensions. Everything looks good. What we'll do is we're going to go ahead and loosen this and then retighten it. Okay. All right. All right, so now we are ready to reinstall for the final time. All right, so go ahead and reinstall all of our cover bolts. Put our brackets back in, all our wires. We do have one. This is a seal, and the seal goes back right here. And once we get all done here, this crank pulley, the torque on this thing is 181 foot-pounds, I believe. Right around the 180 mark. We're going to go ahead and put the rest of the bolts in for everything else. All our timing cover, and then we can get our belts on. All right, so before we put our timing cover back on, we need to reinstall the motor mount. Go ahead and put our dipstick tube back in. All right, let's go ahead and get this motor pulled up on the, from hanging there. All right, so here we have our valve cover. We're going to replace the valve cover gasket. This thing was doing quite a bit of leaking. So I'll go ahead and so we have a valve cover kit gasket that we got from Auto Parts Direct to You. And we're going to have pretty much all the seals. These are the bolt seals, these are the spark plug wire seals, and then our gasket. All right, so then we pop these out. Wow. All right, so there's another way to do those. Looks like that's pretty solid in there. Doesn't look like this one's wanting to come out. There's that one. Normally this would be the way to get them out. But they just don't want to. Okay. And so go ahead and clean up our surface. And then we will reinstall. Okay, so we'll go ahead and press these down. Go ahead and push all of our bolts out there. So we'll replace those. We'll go ahead and set this back on the engine. All right, so putting those seals on, you're just gonna have to muscle it together and twist it. You got to twist it and work it past that piece there. So just kind of push it together and twist. Okay, so just got to work with it. So we had 5 bolts in total here. We got 2 small ones in the front and 3 long ones in the back here. All right, so we have all of our bolts in. We'll go ahead and tighten our valve cover down. Now we're going to kind of do it a little bit at a time, going around the perimeter in kind of a cross pattern. That'll help seat it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and reinstall our spark plugs. Now we have new spark plugs. All right, so we're just gonna, we do have some other stuff to replace. We talked about the PCV. We'll go back for all this stuff, and what we're gonna do is just basically get her running again. Ensure that everything is good. No weird noises. Everything is running good. Because we got quite a laundry list with this car being a new used car. Okay. All right, so we have everything together. All of our bolts are in. Now we don't have any belts yet. And we have the crank pulley in. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put the belts on. Now these are the original belts that we had before that we needed to replace. Like I said, this car has got quite a laundry list, and we're going to make our way down to all these components. We're just spacing out the money the customer has. This is a 16-year-old new car from Craigslist. So, and kind of fixing the car in order of breakdown. So we had a coolant leak and a bad timing belt. So we started there. We got our belts on. What we're going to do next is we're going to do some coolant hoses and fill the system up. Some other little, we're going to wait for some pieces. I guess we should get some PCV. We have a distributor leak. So we're all done with this job other than topping off the coolant. But we have a lot of other issues we're going to address while we have this car.